to remember something I said that you, several years ago. I forget it nearly, and now you are reminding me, mashallah, la quwwata illa billah. May Allah give you strength, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. What I would like to share with you this morning, on the request of the sister, to talk about the history of Palestine. So when a few days ago I was giving this title, I thought to share with you some of research which I have done based on the British Archive, because who was occupying that Holy Land was the British, and the British were the source of all the problem which still exists until now. I'm a British citizen now, and I speak on this without fearing that you will be punished as a result of that. Opposite in the Arab countries, if you speak anything, you will be punished. Maybe you will be hanged, or maybe you will be killed. So what I will be sharing with you is based on my research on the British Archive. In particular, known in London, there is a place in Kew Gardens where all the documentation of the British colonial document is available. It's called Public Record Office, and I spent a good time digging for this document, spending a good time on this archive, and reading so many documents related to Egypt, related to Palestine, related to Transjordan, Iraq. Let's extend Syria, because Syria was under the French, and Lebanon. So I came to this conclusion, which I will share with you. I will not give you details of the research, but I will give you the conclusion of these documents. I came to the conclusion that we are talking of a colonial project. Originally started with the French, then in late 1799, 1789 with Napoleon, and then it has been failed. And the British felt, or the builder of the British Empire, they felt they need a colonial project to continue their project in the East, if I may put it in this way. And that project started in 1800, and they start with the religious community in the UK. So I'm talking of priests, senior religious individual, and they will start talking about the Promised Land, and try to say we need to establish the Messiah will not come back until we establish the Promised Land and bring the Jews back in the Promised Land. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a religious studies scholar, so I can't talk about this. I'm just looking at it from the historical perspective. So it took them up to 40 years until they managed to convert some British politician to adopt that issue until the Prime Minister at that time in 1840, called Palmerston, he adopted the policy, mixed it with the colonial project of the British Empire, and they felt they need, according to these documents, they need a buffer state. So it's a start with the religious background and developed later on as serving the British colonial interest in the East. The combination of both produced the idea of a buffer state. They need to establish a buffer state in the region. And when I looked at correspondence between London and Istanbul, I mean the British and the consulate in Istanbul, that was very clear from the documentation that they were looking for establishing a buffer state. And they were trying to convince the Ottoman at that time to help them on these issues. But there was no positive response from the Ottoman. And the Ottoman at that time was in decline. So it was not on the rise. The Ottoman were in decline. The decline of the Ottoman state took a long time until it collapsed. So that was in 1840. Then in 1882, they occupied Egypt. And occupying Egypt was the first step to implement the establishment of a buffer state. The buffer state, they were looking at Palestine. To move into Palestine, you need Egypt. And there is so many geopolitical issues connecting Egypt with the Holy Land. So they occupied Egypt as a first practical steps. Sorry, I think I missed that in 1838 they established the first British consulate in Jerusalem. And there is a huge document of this consulate. Why they establish it? To protect the Jewish minority in Palestine. That was the excuse. Although the Jews in Palestine at that time was less than 2% of the total Muslim and Christian population of the land. So they established this consulate not to protect the British living in Jerusalem, but to protect the Jewish minority. And this was the norm. That was the norm in Syria, for example, and Lebanon. The French established to protect the Maronites, for example, or the Christians. So it was, if you like, the culture, the mood in that time, with colonial power is trying to protect the minority. But the minority was a pretext for their own aim. It's like nowadays, America and European country talking about human rights. For us in international relations, human rights is sometimes an excuse to interfere into the internal politics of sovereign state. That's another issue. I'm not talking about it today. So we have, at the beginning of that century, we have the religious leader started the idea, then converted the politician to this idea, which led to the establishment of the British consulate in Jerusalem, and the occupation of Egypt in 1882. In 19, I'm trying to jump, because talking of history, as sister requested, is not an easy job. Especially, I'm not reading from a book. It's a research which I have done, and it's been so many years. So it is in not in the front of me. It's you know, when you examine documents, you live with the document. So alhamdulillah, I'm still not memorizing it, understanding it. I don't like memorization. Memorization can disappear very easily. So in 1907, there was a Prime Minister of Britain called Campbell Bannerman. Campbell Bannerman organized a conference in London, but not in a conference for one day. It took a couple of weeks, where he invited key scholars, and this is where I would like to highlight. Politicians in European countries and in the West, they base their action on scholarly work. In Muslim countries, scholar work is rubbish. Rubbish for the politician, because they feel they understand everything. They don't need scholarly work, unfortunately. I'm talking of the majority of Muslim countries. The Muslim leaders, they don't work based on scholarly work. In the UK, I know politicians, they don't have much time. So they have scholars. They come to us at universities and get our consultation. For example, if you are an expert in Southeast Asia, they come to you before they make any decision on any issue. Alhamdulillah, Muslim politician in Muslim country, they know everything. They don't need consultation with anyone. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So he brought scholars, historian in geography, in anthropology, religion, languages, and the task given by the Prime Minister, Campbell Bannerman, was very simple. Just to stop for brother and sister just to come and sit. So the task was for this long conference, as I said, the Ottoman were collapsing. And the major colonial power, in particular the British, they were thinking how to inherit the land of the Ottoman. And part of the land of the Ottoman is the Arab region. And the Arab region at that time, there was no oil at that time. But they know this is rich in culture. All the religion came from there. Judaism came from there, Christianity came from there, Islam came from there. So it's a very rich, culturally, religiously, even economically, if you look at it, the Arab region control what we call the traditional international route of trade. So even before the oil, the region is very significant. I'm a scholar of geopolitics. Geopolitically, the Arab region is very significant for any superpower or any colonial power. So the task given by the British Prime Minister, Campbell Bannerman, to these scholars, how we can control the Arab region after the collapse of the Ottoman. That's the task. So they spend so many weeks and they came to the conclusion. The conclusion saying, to control this region, you need to divide them and to establish mini states or artificial states. This is not my language. This is the language of the document. To establish a mini state or artificial state. And to have ruling elites which their loyalty to the West. Is that ringing a bell to you? I'm talking of 1907. You see, history, when you go back to document, it tells you so many things. So, artificial, mini states, and then install. I think that's the word in the document. Install regime to rule that many states or artificial states and connected with Western power. Third, to fight any kind of unity among these people, religiously, historically, language, in base, any sort of unity. This is where the famous British policy, divide and rule. I remember when I was doing my PhD at Exeter University, this is the first time I came across this policy, and I have to discuss it with my supervisor, and it took me a long time until we find all the proof that this is the official policy of the British, and they did not hide it. Divide and rule. If you divide people, you manage to rule them very, very easily. So all these recommendations, and then there was the last recommendation to implement, to achieve all these recommendations, you need to establish a buffer state in the Holy Land. Are you getting the history? Accordingly, Israel is a buffer state in the Western project in the region. It's not a Jewish project. This is one of the mistakes in the Muslim country. They say it's a Jewish state. Sorry, it's a Jewish project. It's a Western project until this moment. And I will show you why it is until this moment. So that was in 1907. That was in 1800. It was in 1838. It was in 1840. Zionism came later on. When was the first conference of Zionism by Herzl in Basel? It was in 1897. I'm talking of 1800. So it's not, how to put it? It's not a misunderstanding of the project, saying this is a Zionist, this is a Jewish project. No. The British used the British colonial used the Jews to achieve their goals in the Arab region. With the points I just mentioned. And then after the establishment of Zionism, there was a collaboration between the British colonial power and Zionists, and I can see this in Balfour Declaration. Most of people, you are aware of Balfour Declaration, but Balfour Declaration just came late in 1917. And when I looked at the document of Balfour Declaration, it took 2 years until it was issued. There was 6 texts. I looked at all these texts until they came to the final text. It's not Balfour gave this promise. It was the British government. It was the British. So, but who signed it? It was the Foreign Secretary at that time, Balfour. But when you read the first line, it says, Her Majesty, the government, etc., etc. And I looked at all the minutes of this. But one interesting thing in the document, after they approve, the approval, by the way, was not on the 2nd of November 1917, it was on the 30th of October. But the letter was written, you know, when you have a meeting, you minute it, and then after a few days, it is implemented. So the meeting was on the 30th of October 1917, and the letter was signed by his civil servant, typed it, and then, but the wording was approved. So on the 30th, when the cabinet finishing the meeting, who was waiting outside was Haim Weizmann, the first president of Israel. Haim Weizmann is a scholar. He was at Manchester University. I will not go in that detail. This is a long story. So he came out, Balfour. What he said to Weizmann, he said, "Congratulations, you have a son. Congratulations, you have a son." Means, خلاص, the pregnancy over. This pregnancy took a century to prepare this baby, and this baby was the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Is that enough, sister, for history? Is that enough? To the conclusion, I'm saying, I have a lot to share on that history, but the conclusion which I would like you to understand, like I understood several years ago, that Israel is not a Jewish project, it is a Western project to serve the colonial Western power in the region. Tamam. That was, and the British occupied Palestine in 1917, after Balfour Declaration, by the way. Balfour Declaration was in early November. Mid-December, it was around the Christmas time, General El-Limbi managed to enter. Who was his army? Muslim army, occupying Bayt Al-Maqdis and Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, under the command of, mainly they were from India and from Egypt. I don't wish to depress you in the morning, because when I looked at it, it was very depressing to me that the British used the Muslims to fight the Muslims and to occupy the Holy Land. So when Balfour entered in 1917, his famous statement, "Today is the end of the Crusader period." Basically, we have recaptured Baitul Maqdis. We have captured the Holy Land again. So it's not ended with Salah ad-Din. Now we are returning back, and that was very obvious with the French commander when he entered Damascus and went to the grave of Salah ad-Din. and kicked the grave by his foot, and he said, "Wake up, Salah ad-Din, we return back." Very painful. We have returned. Yeah, wake up. Yeah, this is what he said. Yes, Goro. Goro. Yes. There is so many to say about this, but this is like an introduction. So the British since 1917 until 1948 fulfill the requirement of establishing a Jewish state. To establish a state, you need three pillars. You need land, you need people, and you need sovereignty. People, the British opened the land for Jewish immigration from all over the world. Welcome. Because they were, as I said earlier, they were 10%. And they were living peacefully with the Muslim and with the Christian. There was no problem. But now, to establish, you need to bring, and that was through immigration, including the Holocaust, including pushing the Jews, killing the Jews in Europe to run away to come to, and there is a PhD thesis on this, the collaboration between Zionism and Nazism regarding pushing them to come to the Holy Land. The land, who's in control? The British. So they managed to give them the land for free. And sometimes I go to countries and they say Palestinians sold their land to the Jews. This is absolute rubbish. According to the British Archive, most of the land has been given to by the British authority. Sovereignty, it was the Jewish agency, Al-Wakala Al-Yahudiyya, the Jewish agency, which was giving the power. When the British in 1947 done the job, they said, we are withdrawing, and we will be referring the issue to the United Nations. And the United Nations decided to partition Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state, and then the whole problem started since then. Again, the message I'm saying this morning, this is not a Jewish project. This is a Western colonial project. Britain after World War II collapsed as a superpower. Who emerged as a superpower? United States of America. So United States of America took this responsibility of continuing securing the state of Israel. Why? Because securing the state of Israel is securing the Western interest in the region. I will jump all through to come to Biden, the current American president. According to him, when he was senator in the 70s, 1970s, he said his father planted in him, you don't need to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And in his latest visit, he repeated what he said in the 70s when he landed in Ben Gurion Airport just a few weeks ago. And he said the same. You don't need to be a Jew to be a Zionist. In the 70s and the 80s, when he was a senator, he said a statement and he repeated it several times. He said, and please be careful with this, he said, if there is no Israel, America must create Israel. I will repeat this again. He said, if there is no Israel, America must create Israel to serve the American interest in the region. Is that not the similar agenda of the British colonial at the beginning of that century? From my research, I can say very clearly, if America closes the tap, there will be no Israel in a short period of time. Israel is depending 100% on America. Militarily, economically, all the biggest aid come to Israel from United States of America, from the taxpayer, American taxpayer. And this is a big problem. I know there is lobbying on this issue. Go back to the British. In 2017, it was 100 years of Balfour Declaration. We tried to lobby the British government to apologize. I need to be careful again with this. To apologize of Balfour Declaration. Who was the Prime Minister at that time? It was Theresa May, a conservative. If you follow the British politics, there is now a fight in the leadership who will become the next prime minister. This is also another issue. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, in the Parliament, responded to that, and she said, "We are proud of our role of establishing the State of Israel, and we will not apologize for establishing the State of Israel." Which means, although this is 100 years, still Britain, the colonial agenda still occupying the mind of the politician in both parties, by the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. I think if we understand that this is a Western project, it was started with the British and now with the American, our attitude how to deal with the issue of Palestine will be totally different. Will be totally different. If we understand that this is a Western project in the region, how we deal with the Palestinian issue will be totally different. Because we are dealing with this issue like this is a Jewish project. But when you deal with it, this is a Western project, what it means, I will explain now. So when you are fighting the State of Israel, you are not fighting the Israelis. You are fighting all the Western colonial power. Thank you. This is one aspect of what I mean. So, understanding it will change your attitude how to resolve the Palestinian. Because as a result of the establishment of the State of Israel, we have the Palestinian problem. We have the refugees. We have the issue of Bayt Al-Maqdis. We have the issue of the Holy Land. We have the issue of the holy sites. We have the issue of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. We have so many issues as a result of this. So when you go to the Western power asking them for help, you are doing a mistake. Because this is their baby. Are you getting where I'm moving? This is their baby. And have you seen anyone standing against his son or his daughter? You remember what I said when Balfour went outside to Weizmann and he said, "Congratulations, you have a son." So have you seen any father standing and killing his son? No. Even if your son is bad. You remember on Nuh alayhi salam? Huh? What he said? He said, إنه ابني. Although he is doing not good things, but he is biologically my son. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said? No. إنه ليس من أهلك. إنه عمل غير صالح. Let me just finish this and then I can take I can stop and take all the questions, but let me finish because this is the most important part of the conclusion. So when Muslim countries or Palestinians go back to the Western power asking for help, they are doing a big mistake. And unfortunately, if you look at Arab region, the Arab are 22 Arab countries, by the way. They were one region. They are now 22. And this is as a result, you remember Campbell Bannerman and his recommendation, divide them and establish many states. I will not name any country here, but if you look at the map, there is many states everywhere in the Arab region. Some of them, they are not qualified. I will not name, so not to put this place in any difficulty. I can, as a scholar, mention, but not to put this place in any difficulty with any country, because this is not my job. Some of the countries, these many states, they apply to the United Nations, and at the beginning, their application was refused because they don't have the qualification to be a state according to the United Nations standard. Some of these countries, the foreigners are 95% of the population. And what they called the tribes on that region, less than 5%. So they are not qualified to be. And they were under now the American protection. Trump said it very clearly. This man was very honest. He's crazy. But he's a businessman. He was very open. I don't like him, but it's not liking or disliking. He's a businessman. He was working in business, and he managed to collect a good amount of money from the Arab region. Again, I will not go in details on this. But he said, naming a country, and this country representing that region, he said, if I pull my support, your regime will collapse in 2 weeks. He said it, wallah. He said, I spoke with the ... I spoke on the phone and I told him, if you don't, your regime will collapse in 2 weeks. Go back to Campbell Bannerman. This is the reality of the Arab region. Even what we call the most important parts of the Arab region, look at Egypt. Egypt is very central. They destroy Egypt. Look at Syria. They destroy Syria. Look at Iraq. They destroy Iraq. We called in international relation, Egypt is a failed state. That's how we describe Egypt. It's a failed state. Iraq is a failed state. Syria, no state. Because it's under several occupation. Bashar al-Assad, he is not ruling. He don't have any ruling. It's under the American the Russian and the Iranian. And the Americans, by the way, they are smart enough. They took what they called the beneficial Syria. Where is the oil? Even they were dealing with Daesh on the oil issue. But again, I will not go in details of this. So these are, when I mention Iraq, Syria, Egypt, these were the center of power geopolitically in the region, and they destroyed them. Let me finish by a statement by I think I can't remember, one of the Israeli prime minister, not the current one. He said, Israel is not strong, but the Arab region, Israel is not strong because itself. It is because we have weakened the surrounding Arab country. And he is referring here, I think referring to Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. I think I can stop here because I notice several hands has been raised, so I can take and answer a question. Is that address the title, sister, you would like me to talk about, or there is other issue you would like me to talk about? No, I'm asking. What I have give is Is that enough for your audience? Is that what you were expecting? Tamam, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. So we'll take the. I think the brother here raised his hand first. If you don't mind, sister. I know ladies first. But you know this expression, ladies first. Why? You know. It was to get rid of the ladies. It's not to get respect to the ladies. I know the story. Go ahead.
Some curious about Saudi cooperation actually supports the Saudis cooperating with Israel, not because they want to work with Zionists, because they were trying to save Palestine. So like for the longest time, Saudis have offered to help in financial aid, but Palestinians refused it. Why is that?
Very interesting.
My Saudi friend.
No, very interesting.
Yeah,
what you are saying is very interesting.
Yes.
The Saudis offered, you name, I did not name anyone, by the way. No, let me take it part. You said the Saudis provided aid to the Palestinian and the Palestinian refused.
They offered. They didn't provide. They
offered and they refused.
The Palestinians refused.
This is absolutely rubbish. This is absolutely rubbish. Financially, the Saudis, they gave the Palestinian National Authority money. Weapons? No way. No way. No Arab regime gave any single pistol to the Palestinian.
So who? Iran.
This is very interesting. For the Palestinian National Authority, the Israelis allowed these weapons as part of the agreement. Do you know why? And this came from Israel. Why? To protect the Israeli security.
So,
Not, let me just finish. Not to protect the Palestinian, but to protect the state of Israel. Why? Because Oslo Accord, which led to the establishment of the Palestinian National Authority, say that the Palestinian National Authority will be an agent to protect not the security of the Palestinian, but the security of Israel. This is why they provide these weapons to the Palestinian police and to the Palestinian security to save the Israeli, not to the Palestinian. So Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian National Authority, when they agree to work against the Palestinian in favor of the Israeli, I will leave the rest analysis to you.
Investigation by they reported that Mossad made a mistake saying Hamas and Hezbollah.
Who? Mossad funded Hamas?
And Hezbollah. Because why? They wanted to get rid of two, they wanted to kill two birds with one stone. They funded both of them. What? Separate from each other. They send them money to fight each other,
Okay.
hoping that they kill each other and then Bill can finally.
Okay. As a scholar, I don't depend on rubbish reports. This for me is absolutely nonsense. I don't know who this, but what I'm saying, as a scholar, I have my research and I based on proper research with proper methodology. I don't report on something which is based on imagination. I can assure you that this is nonsense from my own research, my own scholarly research. So it seems you are reading something wrong. You are basing your data in something you should not. You should go to the primary sources. You should dig for something based on research.
Currently, modern development.
Well, I'm following on a daily basis for over 35 years. And what you are saying to me, either with the Saudis and with this report, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. Yeah. Let us take the sister, if you don't mind. Yeah, go ahead. They do.
Very much.
I think I mentioned this at the beginning with the British thinking and the British strategic planning, that they decided they need a buffer state to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4, which I just mentioned. And absolutely they were right in their strategic planning. They find the buffer state. The buffer state was Israel, and the Israel achieved the other 3 points, which the British is doing. Divide the Arabs. The Arabs are divided. They are fighting among each other. If you look at the region, Arabs are fighting each other very strongly. There is mini state and artificial state. There is. I forget the third one I just mentioned. But basically, the establishment. This is why Biden said, if there is no Israel, America must establish the state of Israel to serve the American interest here. They are using Zionism for their own end. During the Ottoman, the Arab region was one block. Or, if to put it, for example, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan were one unit called Bilad al-Sham since Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When Rasulullah reached Tabuk, he said, from here, the beginning of Sham. Tabuk is part of Sham, according to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is the region. But now it is 4 states. I will give you example of these 4. There was no, in history, there was nothing called Jordan. There was nothing called the Transjordan. In 1921, Churchill was visiting Cairo, and they hold a conference, and Churchill decided to establish Transjordan and to bring one of the sons of Sharif Hussein bin Ali, the Sharif of Mecca, who served the British, and make the Arab revolt against the Ottoman. So thanks to him, he installed his family, his son Abdullah, as the Amir of Transjordan. Before that, there was nothing in history called the Transjordan. So some of the regimes, if you look at the borders, the longest border with Palestine is with Jordan. Who's protecting that borders? Not allowing Muslims to liberate Palestine and to liberate Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, the Kingdom of Jordan. Is that clear, sister? Thank you. Not known. Not known, and they will not. I said I'm basing this on my long research on the archive. It's not published. Because if it is known, this will be a problem to this regime. The good things. What is the first verse in the Quran revealed to us as Muslims? They don't wish us to read. If you read and you read proper sources, then your mind will be totally different. Please. Oh, mashallah.
Yes. The topic of the talk is Bayt Al-Maqdis. Teacher, correct me if I'm wrong. So, would you mind to give us about the term Bayt Al-Maqdis? What is Bayt Al-Maqdis? To me, it's not that familiar because we are not talking much about it. More or less, idea in Islam. Although it's important. Number one, what is Bayt Al-Maqdis? If you don't mind, to say a word about the future of Bayt Al-Maqdis. Yes, the topic is there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, brother. Thank you, and welcome. The topic I was giving is to talk about the history of Palestine. But your question is very relevant, and I have done so many research about this. And they try to revive the concept of Baitul Maqdis. Because unfortunately, with the current what we call national state, and with nationalism, we lost that name. So to answer to your question, Baitul Maqdis is a prophetic terminology. The first human being to use this terminology is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He did not use the word Palestine. He used the word Sham, and he used the word Baitul Maqdis. We'll give you one example, and this is out of thousands of examples. When Shaddad ibn Aus came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they were discussing, and he said to him, الشام سيفتح. بلاد الشام will be conquered. وبيت المقدس will be conquered. So Bayt Al-Maqdis is the big area. Bayt Al-Maqdis is part of Bilad al-Sham. So number one, it's a prophetic terminology used by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Secondly, geographically, it's not a city, it's a region. And we have an excellent research published in English on that region. We have a full PhD talking about all the early Muslim sources to define only the borders of Bayt Al-Maqdis. Because some people, they think Bayt Al-Maqdis is Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. It's not. It's part of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, it's part of Bayt Al-Maqdis. Some they feel it's the city of Al-Quds, the city of Jerusalem. It's not. A city of Jerusalem, city of the old city, is part of Bayt Al-Maqdis. Bayt Al-Maqdis is a region, north, south, even some part of Jordan now is part of Bayt Al-Maqdis, the area of called Al-Karak and Mu'ta. Mu'ta is the first battle with the Roman, was in the land of Bayt Al-Maqdis. So number one, Bayt Al-Maqdis is a prophetic terminology. Secondly, the border of Bayt Al-Maqdis is more than a city or the mosque. Thirdly, the border of Bayt Al-Maqdis, as defined by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it's like the holy border of Mecca and the holy border of Medina. But we lost this. Why? We lost it for nationalism. We lost it. So Muslim mind, don't connect with that land. Oh, this is a Palestinian issue. Leave it to them. Let them. But when you know that Bayt Al-Maqdis is a prophetic terminology, the borders of Bayt Al-Maqdis is holy like Medina, Mecca and Medina, then you start thinking, oh, why I'm not thinking about it? Why I'm not caring about it? Unfortunately, Muslims nowadays, they concern about Palestine not from a religious point of view. They are from nationalist point of view or human point of view. Oh Allah, the Palestinian, they are suffering. So we are trying to help them on this term. But when they know that this is a prophetic issue, this is, even I will go more than this because I have done research also my student. We examined, on the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we have two periods. We have the Mecca period and we have the Medina period. What revealed in the Quran in the Mecca period is related to the Aqidah, to the belief, to establish the foundation. When they moved to Medina, Medina was giving the political order, economical order, social order, etc., etc. So the Mecca was to establish the Aqidah, the Iman, the belief for Muslims. When we examine the Quran revealed in Mecca, 1/3 of the verses revealed in Mecca is related to Bayt Al-Maqdis and the Masjid Al-Aqsa. 1/3 of the Meccan Quran related to, so it's this issue of Bayt Al-Maqdis is part of the Muslim Aqidah, but unfortunately, even with good scholars in Aqidah, they don't touch on this subject. They don't touch on this subject. And this is for me is a Muslim crime. Because the issue of Bayt Al-Maqdis is not a nationalist issue. It is a Muslim, Islamic, and Aqidah issue. And this is where we need to plant this in the heart and the mind of Muslims. Is that answer your question, the first part? So let us move to the future. The future of Baitul Maqdis clearly related in Surah Al-Isra. Clearly, the roadmap of the future of Baitul Maqdis is in Surah Al-Isra. The first 8 verses at the opening of Surah Al-Isra and the last 8 verses in Surah Al-Isra. The roadmap of the future of Baitul Maqdis is there. It's telling us very clearly where is the future of Baitul Maqdis. Baitul Maqdis will return back to be a Muslim land. And it will return back to be the center of Islamic civilization. And it will return back as the source of shining to the whole world. Islam, after the liberation, according to Surah Al-Isra, after the liberation of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and Baitul Maqdis, Islam will shine again. And using my own understanding, we have the first global Islam, which starts with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam until the end of the Ottoman. The next global shining of Islam will be from Baitul Maqdis. Yeah, please.
Verses mind to cite those because in which verses I would like to read about. The first 8 ayahs of Isra, I am familiar with. It deals about the people of Israel, how they established power and how they have been not following the word of Allah, and Allah destroyed them for their sins several times, over and over. But which verses, please, refer to the future practice? If it is just a few months in the end of the Surah of Al-Isra, I would like to review it.
I was last night talking to brothers until midnight on this. Yes.
Prophet Isra, by the way, if you allow my comment,
Yes.
is one of the surahs Quran which should be memorized by Muslims. You know, the importance of that surah is very high.
Yeah.
And also the amount of ayahs is reasonable. So there is not an excuse not to at least familiarize in detail.
I agree with you. It's 111 verses.
Yeah,
But I will share with you something to support your suggesting, which came from Ummuna Aisha radiyallahu anha. Aisha radiyallahu anha narrated that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will not go to bed every night until he reads Surah Al-Isra. But people, Muslims, forget this. Or we have been forced to forget this. Surah Al-Isra, this is according to Ummuna Aisha, al-Mu'mineen Aisha radiyallahu anha. Said Rasulullah, when I said this, I'm a scholar of international relations. When I said this to scholar of hadith and the scholar of fiqh, they said, what is that? When I pointed to them, where is that hadith sahih? They said, Wallahi, this is the first time we heard of this hadith. But this is, for me, part is not to link Bayt Al-Maqdis to the Aqidah of the Muslims. So the verses, Akhi, started, I said the first eight pages, 8 verses with Subhanalladhi Asra, Subhanalladhi Asra, بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا. You see the word نريه من آياتنا, it needs a lot of explanation. إنه هو السميع البصير. Yeah. from this verse, أخي, I develop a geopolitical theory on this verse.
Korea. Enlightened.
وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا ذرية من حملنا مع نوح إنه كان عبدا شكورا وقضينا we have ruled وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولتعلن علوا كبيرا فإذا جاء وعد أولاهما the first promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and here the scholar dispute, is the first on the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when he kicked the Jews from Medina, or we are referring to Nebuchadnezzar on the early time. I'm more inclined to take the tafsir of it's the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because the Arabic language tells us it was these verses revealed less than 2 years before the hijrah to Medina. So the tense it's used, it will come in the future, not it happened in the past. فإذا جاء وعد أولاهما بعثنا عليكم عبادا لنا أولي بأس شديد فجاسوا خلال الديار وكان وعدا مفعولا ثم رددنا the one who defeated the Jews, Allah will give power to the Jews over them. Current time. ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال وبنين وجعلناكم أكثر نفيرا إن أحسنتم أحسنتم لأنفسكم وإن أسأتم فلها فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة. This is what we are waiting for. Yes. فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة ليسوءوا وجوهكم. These are the 3 methodological steps. ليسوءوا وجوهكم وليدخلوا المسجد كما دخلوه أول مرة وليتبروا ما علوا تتبيرا. This is the future. وليتبروا ما علوا تتبيرا عسى ربكم أن يرحمكم وإن عدتم عدنا وجعلنا جهنم للكافرين حصيرا. These are the first 8 verses. The last one started talking again about the future, which started from verse 101. ولقد آتينا موسى 9 آيات بينات فاسأل بني إسرائيل إذ جاءهم فقال له فرعون إني لأظنك يا موسى مسحورا قال لقد علمت ما أنزل هؤلاء إلا رب السماوات والأرض بصائر وإني لأظنك يا فرعون مثبورا فأراد أن يستفزهم من الأرض فأغرقناه ومن معه جميعا وقلنا يا سلام وقلنا Allah said وقلنا من بعده لبني إسرائيل اسكنوا الأرض فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة the final promise فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة جئنا بكم لفيفا وبالحق أنزلناه. What is this truth? وعد الآخرة وبالحق أنزلناه وبالحق نزل وما أرسلناك إلا مبشرا ونذيرا وقرآنا فرقناه لتقرأه على الناس على مكث ونزلناه تنزيلا. Let me stop with this. قل آمنوا به أو لا تؤمنوا. Allah saying to us, you would like to believe in this promise? It's up to you. You deny this promise? It's up to you. قل آمنوا به أو لا تؤمنوا به. The final promise. قل آمنوا به أو لا تؤمنوا. It's up to you. It's up to you. قل آمنوا به أو لا تؤمنوا به إن الذين أوتوا العلم من قبله. The people who got knowledge, they will believe in it. The people who got the knowledge, ulama, scholars, they believe in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah said, it's up to you Muslims. You would like to believe in this promise? It's up to you. You deny it, no problem. But he said, the people who will believe in this is the scholars, the ulama. قل آمنوا به أو لا تؤمنوا إن الذين أوتوا العلم. Who's أوتوا العلم? The علماء. إن الذين أوتوا العلم من قبله إذا يتلى عليهم يخرون للأذقان سجدا ويقولون سبحان ربنا إن كان وعد ربنا لمفعولا ويخرون للأذقان يبكون ويزيدهم خشوعا. Let me explain this. Basically, when it will happen, the scholars know it will happen. They believe in this. They will submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because they read it in Surah Al-Isra and they see it in reality. They read it in Surah Al-Isra and they, Allahu Akbar, it's happening. يخرون للأذقان سجدا ويقولون يبكون ويزيدهم خشوعا. قل ادعوا الله أو ادعوا الرحمن أيما تدعوا فله الأسماء الحسنى ولا تجهر بصلاتك ولا تخافت بها وابتغ بين ذلك سبيلا. The last verse is also very important. وقل الحمد لله. That's the beginning of the Islamic revivalism globally. قل الحمد لله. Say الحمد لله. قل الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا. لم يتخذ ولدا. Here addressing the Christian belief. قل الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل. What is the last two words in this verse? وكبره. When we do takbir, sister brothers, when we do takbir, when we as Muslims, when we do takbir, salat and victory and fajr, azan, you missed on when we celebrate the Eid. Yes? When we celebrate the Eid, what we say, at least I don't know in Malaysia, I haven't celebrated Eid in Malaysia, but we go with takbir. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. لا إله إلا الله. توحيد. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. Celebration. The liberation of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa will be the biggest celebration for the Muslim Ummah. Does that address your question, Akhi?
Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Akhi. Pleasure. You are most welcome. Yes. Bismillah.
Yes, if there's nobody else, referring to Surah Al-Isra, talk about masjid by the time of the Bani Israel. There was no such thing as masjid. They have temple, right? It talks about the destruction of masjid. What is masjid in our language translated to? Is it the temple?
This is a very deep question, which one of my students spent 4 years on this. He's a professor now. Abu Dhar, the Sahabi Abu Dhar, asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, what is the first mosque built on earth? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, أول مسجد ما أول مسجد وضع على الأرض قال البيت الحرام, the Kaaba. That's the first. Yeah, we have Adam coming down. We have Adam coming down to earth. He needs a place of worship. So the first house of worship was the Kaaba. Abu Dhar asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what was the next one? He said, Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. So Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was built. He said, وَكَمْ بَيْنَهُمَا? What is the length between building the first and the second? He said 40 years. Only. According to Rasulullah, not according to me. according to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the scholars, they said, the first builder of the Kaaba was Adam, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not leave the earth without a place of worship. So the first place of worship was the Kaaba. And then Adam built Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Adam. Even there is a narration that Adam was the first to make i'tikaf in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. The first human to make i'tikaf in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. I'tikaf is the word noon, yes? You know, no, that's tawaf. I'tikaf is to cut yourself from all the dunya and to stay in the place for an hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours. So Adam cut himself and sit in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa only for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Maryam, like Yahya, like Zakaria, etc., etc. No. I'tikaf, I thought this is exactly. Staying in the masjid for a certain period of time. It can be for an hour or it can be for a few days. Like in Ramadan, in the last 10 days of Ramadan, we make i'tikaf in the masjid. Different from tawaf. Tawaf is in the Kaaba. So the concept of mosque came with the beginning of this life, because all the prophets came with عقيدة التوحيد, with the tawheed. ما كان إبراهيم عليه السلام يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما. So the mosque was built by Adam throughout history. Destroy, rebuild, destroy, rebuild, destroy, rebuild. The current one built from the Umayyad after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The current building. What
we see it today with the golden roof.
Built by the Umayyad. By Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and his son Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik. The current. That's a good question. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to visit in the night journey to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, there was no single building in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. According to Madaba map. Madaba map is a Byzantine map, which I have visited. Madaba is a city in Jordan, in a church, and I visited that church, and there is so many material available to this map showing Bayt Al-Maqdis, the city of Bayt Al-Maqdis, the city of Al-Quds, during the Byzantine period before Islam. So the area of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was no building at all, was ruined, was no building. Yeah. There was nothing. There was nothing as part of this this conflict. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he conquered, he built a wooden mosque in the place where Rasulullah had described to him. And by the way, the scholars, when they decide what is a mosque is not a building. A mosque is location with borders directed to the Kaaba. So you don't need to have a building to consider this as a mosque. So when Allah subhanahu, he said, تَدْخُلُ الْمَسْجِدَ كَمَا دَخَلُوهُ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. This is on the second time. He's referring to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. There is nothing in the Quran or in the Sunnah of Rasulullah talking about temple. There is nothing. The concept of temple is not there. It is the concept of masjid, and this is a big subject to talk about.
But the current people in power Bayt Al-Maqdis, area of Al-Aqsa. They claim that there is a temple underneath the masjid.
Very
The
good.
statement
Very good question.
that is related to the future.
Yes.
Also
Yes.
to the geopolitical
Yes.
ones that we can understand with our human experience and eyes.
Yes. This is a Jewish Zionistic claim. I will give you a wider. Do we have time so I can a little bit expand, because this is a very important question. I followed all the Jewish scholarly and not scholarly view regarding where was the Jewish temple. And there is no single agreement where was the Jewish temple. And I find the following. Somebody said in Nablus, in the north, and there is a group called Samaraiyin, Jewish religious community, and they live there, still in Nablus, and they believe the temple was there. Some, they believe it's in Silwan. Silwan is next to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, not on the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. One of the cities, there is water and description of, according to the I'm not sure the Old Testament or the New Testament, describe, which they find it in a city of Silwan. The third, they believe it's on the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Let us take that it is on the site of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Since 1967, the Israeli scholars from different universities, they've done digging under Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. And according to all of them, they were part, and they are prominent secular Israeli scholars. Their chief, I'm sorry, I don't have his name. Normally, I lose names. He published a report and said, after so many years of digging under Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, we did not find a single evidence that this is the site of the Jewish temple. We did not find a single evidence that this is the site of the temple. So this is not me. This is not me. This is the top scholar work after so many decades of digging under Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. They are.
The aim is the destruction of the current Masjid Al-Aqsa.
Yes, not now to find any evidence, unfortunately. And I can reveal that nearly Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, okay, there is so many stories regarding how the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa planning for destruction. One, they say the Muslims, if Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa is very significant to them, okay, we will help them with all scientific to move Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and to put it to any Muslim country. Yeah. If it is significant to Muslim, we will help them with all the technology. We'll take it in pieces as it is, and we promise we will put it. Okay, Muslims, it's nice. We will. This is one. It's published. This is one scenario. The second, yeah, absolutely. The second, they said they continue the digging in the hope that there will be no foundation and an earthquake will hit the area and it will collapse, and they will say to Muslims, your Allah destroy your mosque. By the way, this is published. I'm not coming. I don't read a newspaper. A newspaper for me is not the source. Yeah, I go in the primary sources. The other one, the third one, which is to bomb Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and they tried this before. They tried to burn one of the buildings in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in 1969. The fourth one, as far as I know, I don't know how they will do it. They said maybe when there is a war or somewhere where the Ummah is busy with something happening around them with technology above the Masjid Al-Aqsa, they might do something. It's like not a natural, creating an earthquake. So it's not a natural earthquake which will lead to the destruction. So yes, they are, and by the way, they are now openly talking about the destruction of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. In the past, it was secret. But now they have MPs in the Knesset. They have groups has been established for the destruction of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. I don't deal with Zionists.
Non-Zionist.
Yeah. Non-Jewish Jews, they know this. They know this, and they are against the establishment of the State of Israel. Yes.
Anti.
Yes. In the UK, we have.
What do they say about that?
They are minority. Tiny minority. So they will not make any impact. Yes, there is a good number, but what I'm saying, they are very tiny minority. Yani, they might not be active and making some impact. Yes, sister. Well, I'm getting excellent question. That is a very practical question. If I understood you correctly, what you are as a Muslim and the brothers here in Malaysia as Muslims, what we can do to be part of the liberation of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa? Very simple answer. Ilmun wa ma'rifah. Knowledge and science. That's the starting point. I will repeat. What was the first verse revealed to us as Muslims? Read. But we don't read. We don't read.
We don't understand.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't wish to insult myself this morning, and my brothers and sisters. Yes, you are absolutely right. So I have been in a mission for 30 years. What is my mission? Is to spread knowledge. Ilmun wa ma'rifah. Ilm is science. Ma'rifah is knowledge. My job is to reveal this to Muslims and to tell them this is not an issue for the Palestinian. This is an issue for you as a Muslim. To protect yourself on the hereafter, you need to do for that. And this is why I'm with the NGO Hilwan. I'm touring Malaysia for 2 months, only to talk about Bayt Al-Maqdis. You just ask about history of Palestine. It's not part of my agenda to talk about the history of Palestine, although I have done research. But my agenda is to spread the knowledge of Bayt Al-Maqdis and to tell Muslims this is your issue, and to give them all the evidence that this is their issue. So I'm touring most of Malaysia over 2 months. Each state, I don't think I will cover everything in the state, but I will be staying in each state for 3-4 days, and visiting scholars. I need to meet with Malaysian scholars, talking to them that this is your duty. And one of my major book has been translated into Malay, so I would like them to be available to Malaysian society here. And also I will be providing train of trainers, close train of trainers for 7 days to select people which they can disseminate this knowledge. So I'm not asking for you to go to fight in Gaza, for example, or I'm not. This is not me. I'm not a politician. I'm not a military man. I'm an academician. I spend you reminded me at the beginning what my father told me. My father, he don't know how to read and to write. When he was forced to leave his land, and I born in a refugee camp, and born in a tent, and I lived in a tent for 18 months, 18 years, 18 months, 18 years. And you will not understand my feeling as a refugee until you live as a refugee. I'm not suggesting that any one of you to be a refugee, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. So when I became a little bit adult, he said to me, Abdul Fattah, we lost our homeland. The only way to get it back is through education. And he put all his resources to send me overseas to study. So he done a real investment. He's a businessman. At the beginning he was very poor, but later on with his business. And he sent to me to the UK to study. And Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So he inspired me with this. He inspired me with this. And now I'm fulfilling still his wish that the only way is through ilm and ma'rifah. Unfortunately, Muslims related to Bayt Al-Maqdis, what they do, for example, there is attack in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, or there is attack in Gaza, like what is happening currently since yesterday. What we do? We go demonstration, Allahu Akbar, ooh, all our feeling, and then we return back home here in Malaysia and we eat biryani or nasi.
Go back to ignorance.
Yeah. Durian, yeah. We enjoyed our life and we forget everything. Or I went to a Muslim country and I gave a lecture like this about Bayt Al-Maqdis. My talk normally is not about Palestine, about Bayt Al-Maqdis. But I respected the request came from you, sister. So I gave my talk and finished. After a few days, we have a train of a trainer. So a few of these young chap, they came and they said, you shocked us. I said, why? He said, normally, if a Palestinian coming, they come, talk to us emotionally, and they ask for fund. They ask for donation. I said, I'm not an NGO. I'm not a politician. I'm not a military man. I'm an academic. My job is to spread knowledge. And I don't need what is in your pocket. I need what is in your brain. I'm here to collect what is in your pocket. I'm here to collect what is in your brain. So there is so many charities in Malaysia here. There is so many charities. And they collect donation and they send for Palestine. The question, did we liberate Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa? No. Because this work is not based on ilmun wa ma'rifah. We need to start our work is in ilm al-ma'rifah. Otherwise, because when I examine the prophetic plan for the liberation of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and Bayt Al-Maqdis, the first foundation was ilmun wa ma'rifah. The first verse revealed to us is Iqra, and Iqra is one of the tools of ilm and ma'rifah. Did I answer your... yeah. Yes.
To allow another question. You have explained the term Bayt Al-Maqdis. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Give a translation, not an explanation of the words. 3 words. Bayt Al-Maqdis. Bayt means house. Correct me if I'm wrong. What is the meaning of Maqdis? Can it be translated or is it an individual term? What is it?
We have
What is Maqdis?
we have debate for 2 years to come with a translation.
You're kidding me.
Yes,
2 years only.
2 years in the UK with my student who I supervised them for their PhD. So we spent 2 years brainstorming how we can translate the word Baitul Maqdis. Bayt, house. Al-Maqdis, holy. Al-Maqdis, holy. So if we said we translate this in English, the holy house, it did not give the prophetic meaning of Bayt al-Maqdis. So I think this will shock and interest you in the same time. The final session on that translation what is the name known in nowadays? Jerusalem. In the UK, I don't know how in Germany, but in the UK, I remember first time I went there and they asked me, from where? I said, I'm from Jerusalem. So the immediate reaction, they said, are you a Jew? Because in the UK, Jerusalem means Jewish Jerusalem. Jewish Jerusalem. So that was a challenge to me. Okay. So we have Jerusalem, and now we are talking of a prophetic terminology, which is an Islamic. So what is the Islamic? Means in English, Islamic. So I said, this is in the final session after long discussion. I said, we wrote the word Islamic and the word Jerusalem. And I said, let us combine them. Let us combine them together. When we combine them, the G here capital was not nice. So Islamic Jerusalem, instead of two separate words, we merge it together, or we make a marriage between them as one word. So it became Islamic Jerusalem. However, the G in the middle was not nice. And I remember the student was doing, she was an Egyptian student. I said to her, make the G small g, not the capital G. And it looks fantastic. So we translated the word Baytul officially, academically, and there is master and PhD degrees called Islamic Jerusalem Studies. So we translate the word Baitul Maqdis in English as Islamic Jerusalem as one word. And this now become well known in academia in United Kingdom. Pleasure.